Four. You're the fourth.
I'm the
Okay.
fourth one, that's what I thought.
All right. I will call this meeting of the Cunningham Town Board to order for Monday, March 10th, 2025. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Wu, Trustee Evans,
Here.
Trustee Hersey,
Here.
Trustee Colasetti, Trustee Bishop, Trustee Wilkin,
Here.
Trustee Quisenberry,
Here.
Mayor Marlin,
Here.
Supervisor Chenoweth,
Present.
Assessor Owana.
Okay. Next item is approval of minutes from two meetings. One is the public hearing minutes from December 9th, 2024, and the meeting minutes from December 9th, 2024. Could I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved by Grace, seconded by Chris. Any substantial corrections? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? That motion passes. Additions or changes to the agenda? I believe you're polling item number 8.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm pulling item number 8 at the recommendation of the attorney.
Okay. Public participation. Does anyone wish to address the Cunningham Town Board? Seeing none, we'll move on to committee to verify bills.
Pull up the packet here. Sorry, I was scrolling. For this March 10th meeting, for the town bill report in the town fund, we had $60,000 and 62 cents, $60,062.31. In expenditures in the general assistance fund, we had $230,456.42. Total expenditures were $290,518.73. And I'm happy to answer any questions folks have about the bills before going on to the memo.
Any questions for Danielle? Can I have a motion to approve the town fund and general assistance fund report?
Yeah, I move approving the payment of the bills.
Second?
Second.
Moved by James, seconded by Sharice. Any discussion? All those, will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Evans,
Yes.
Trustee Hersey,
Yes.
Trustee Wilkin,
Yes.
Trustee Quisenberry,
Yes.
That motion passes. We'll move on to report.
Thank you. Yeah, and I just want to acknowledge and welcome Shayla Kenyon Bass-Briggs, our deputy supervisor, who's with us this evening as well. And has contributed to the report, so if there's certain questions that she can answer, she's here to do so. I just wanted to pull out a few things. You have the memo before you. Our calls for service are down from throughout. It was basically off the chain over the winter. I've been trying to report that to you on a monthly basis. We are now we had 1,230 calls for service in that month. February is a little bit of a short month, but still I think it doesn't account for the difference. It was 1,625 before. We were getting up to 1,800 calls going into the winter. I started to have our front desk also to report on emails. I don't know why utility assistance is not included because we get a lot of messages around that. I think that's probably because those are bills being submitted maybe after a phone call, so I'll check on that. But basically, we received 159 emails in addition to the calls for service, and we're still about where their Urbana Police is on an average basis monthly. General assistance has been unchanged in terms of the numbers. So we've been pretty much hovering around 100 during this year. We do have a significant number of folks who are homeless on general assistance. We had gotten that number to almost 0, and it has been rising. We are really concerned about Social Security. I know that we're not alone in that concern. We saw a record number of SSI, SSDI cases awarded. right at the end of the last administration that probably was an attempt to move a lot through. We've seen it's difficult already to get into Social Security Administration here locally. If I had to guess, they're going to close down local offices and everything will be online. I don't know if you've tried to use SSA.gov, but unless you have a robust financial track record, it's actually pretty impossible to get a login and account. People who don't have credit history, it's almost impossible for them to use the online. So we're concerned about that piece. We do have a second staff member being trained in the SOAR process, which is the process to help people access SSI. It's usually twice as likely in half the time. And so she is about to be certified in SOAR, and we will continue to help people apply for Social Security disability. And I think it'll be more important that people have an advocate to do that. And then we are seeing a slowdown on rental assistance. I think pre-pandemic, we were at about 10 households a month. We're at 22 households. This month, and then the month before in January was 23 households. We are, in terms of bridge to home, I think one of the key issues around street outreach is that we lack safe, warm places for 24/7 for people outside of our only nighttime shelter. And Strides is planning on putting a technology center in their shelter, which I think will be really important for them to be able to have people access digital resources and apply for resources online. That said, it's going to take half of their day room. And so they have a capacity of about 35 people that will go down to about 10 to 15 if they create that technology center. So that there really isn't any place to go. And so I am meeting with MTD, but I think long-term MTDs, there needs to be many different options. And public buildings need to be open for people to access safe shelter, and that includes the city building, that includes the fire station, that includes where people are 24/7. We're really going to have to diversify those. I will give you point-in-time counts when I have them. I think I mentioned at the last meeting, we were counting about 53 people outside. I think yesterday I got an update that it was 54. That is surprising to me, given that I thought we housed every known person who was outside. You will see a significant increase last month in terms of number of people served. Let me see anything else I wanted to pull out. We are launching our help desk at Urbana Free Library tomorrow. We will help people apply for any township assistance program, and then all of the related materials like SNAP and Medicaid and whatnot. And that is being staffed by our peer leaders who've been trained through the community data clinic at the U of I, and they are paid staff members, so they're similar to interns and they will receive minimum wage payment. And then, let's see, I will say a slight increase in food assistance. We had a winter retreat for Solidarity Gardens, and we had 30 people in attendance and did a lot of planning around this, and we presented to Urbana Rotary and requested that they help us for a second year with our free garden plot program, so we're hoping that that will come through. We attended the food summit, and we had our third and final welcoming event. We were able to stretch the budget with the SMAS grant. We had a welcoming event with a mobile DMV, and so we had seen over 200 families in the first two events, and I think this last event was bumper crop. We actually had to dip into angel donor funds to just serve everyone in need, but we were able to take care of vehicle registrations that were expired and driver's licenses. So you'll see that it was I think we had 4 different language translations. We are currently hiring. We have some staff development updates. Shayla Kenyon, I don't know if you wanted to speak to this since this was your piece, or if you'd like me to. Okay, for staff development, we're hiring an outreach and assistance case manager who's going to be helping with walk-ins and phone calls. We're promoting within, so that position's moving up, and we'll have the housing case manager. And then we have a part-time street outreach worker. Both of those are on Indeed.com if people are interested, and either are on our website or should be very shortly. And then Shayla Kenyon is leading our staff development and training, so we're going to have a staff development on tenant rights led by Esther Pat, and then one by Joe Minarick, who on implicit and racial bias. And Joe is from here, you may remember that name. He used to work in the community. And you can see all of our staff training and certifications by staff member on our website. We've organized it a little bit better, so you can see that piece. Happy to answer any. Oh, I'm sorry. The other big thing is that I ended up putting a second entire winter shelter report. This is kind of like closes out our winter shelters, so to speak. Not entirely, it closes out, I guess I would say, our Arctic blast emergency response. Both of our shelters, both Buddies and Pee-wees, go through March. And for the Buddies program, if people have a lease offer or are close to a lease offer, like they have a verbal offer from a landlord, we're gonna have them stay in the program as late as the end of May while they work to move in. So that's exciting, but you can see basically an overview of our programs, how many people that we served, the partnerships that we had. I kind of went over that before. I do want to mention the city reached out about the residents at 2107 South Philo Road who were victims of a fire on February 3rd. They really lost nearly everything that they owed. We had some issues with contacts, and they were moved from one hotel to the other. There were some issues with that, and when we finally were able to kind of get contact and assess all the households, they really were probably in worse shape, I would say, than many of our street outreach participants. Food, transportation, coats, clothing. Some people have been wearing the same clothes for 2 weeks. So I want to go back to the tenant relocation ordinance and also look at partnership with the city and just think about how to minimize the time gap between it, and maybe how we could support the city in having some of the basics on hand right away. I think the understanding was that Red Cross would respond. In theory, that is supposed to happen, and that's a understandable, but I don't think the Red Cross provides a lot of those services, and they certainly didn't in this case. I put the point in time count, the 53 number of residents unfit for human habitation. I started to list some gaps in services and approach. It's pretty slim. You know, there's 6 items here that I think would be worth going deeper, and certainly as we do some of our strategic planning work, we'll look into that piece. I did review this with our winter shelter and street outreach committee of CSPH, and with CSPH as executive committee, and then Shayla Kenyon with the whole group this last week. So they have that information. I'm happy to answer any questions about the memo that you might have.
I would just like to add a few more details to the report about the fire on Philo Road. I was copied on all the correspondence between the city and township, and yeah, there's some pieces we could improve, but people may not know that we do have a tenant relocation ordinance. It's been on the books for years now. So the fire that occurred at 2017 Philo was on February 3rd, and at the time there were 6 units occupied for a total of 7 occupants. So the building wasn't fully occupied, but since it was on the 3rd floor, there was fire, smoke, water damage throughout the property, and it is uninhabitable at this point. February 4th, the city did notify, so the tenants under our tenant relocation ordinance, city made arrangements for them all to be housed at the roadway in Urbana that day, and they were moved that day. February 4th, the city notified township that the tenants were at roadway. We had first names, we did not have last names. And I think there's a form, I think it was the Bridge to Home form that Nick was sent. So that's something we should have on hand rather than trying to get it after the fact. We did get the property, township was provided the property owner's name and address. The property owner is located in Brooklyn, New York, and they're not the most responsive, to put it, you know,
That's being really nice.
put it mildly. Yeah, they're terrible about that. The city had rented rooms until the 17th at Roadway, but ended up relocating five of the residents over to Motel 6, and we had funds for housing through the 24th. I don't know, is it Bridge to Home that's now covering the residents?
Yeah, so
From-
everyone exited except for two who appeared to qualify for our programs, and we've assessed them. One exited today, and to friends and family.
Great.
And the second one, we're looking to combine hotel rooms, and they are looking with another participant, and they're interested in seeking housing together because of their income level. So they're looking to buddy up.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, I
there's
think,
no-
okay. I'm
There's
sorry.
no one that I'm aware of who was exited to street homelessness. We were either able to provide for them at Strides, or we were able to reunify with friends and family.
Okay, good. Yeah, so I think if we can get a link to that form or have paper copies of that form on hand, the city does provide a letter to people when they are being relocated, and that would be an additional thing that we could get filled out right there on the spot. But otherwise, people had a place to stay after the fire, and so it was a good joint effort, I think. Any other questions, Grace?
I had two, but maybe I'll just do one because I saw another hand, one for now. So I appreciate that from the mayor. That was my question on how the city could better work with the township on that relocation. And I hear getting the names and info and having that bridge to home form. And I was wondering if there was anything else. I know you have kind of a bigger plan, but if there's any kind of quick preliminary answer on ways that it could be improved.
I think that, so Esther and I were authors of the tenant relocation ordinance. The original ordinance was scaled back. And I spoke with her after this event, and we talked about re-looking at that ordinance. I've also urged the city of Champaign to have something similar, because they have a really difficult situation at Champaign Apartments right now. That's much larger scale situation from what we experience on Philo Road with over 500 units. And they have no relocation ordinance. I am grateful that the city provided through 3 weeks instead of 2 weeks, because the third week was actually an Arctic blast. And had they been exited, at that point, and we hadn't really been able to make contact with them, some had reached out to us, but we ended up proactively reaching out to them. But because of that extra week, I think that they were in a safer place. I think the issue is that putting someone in a hotel is insufficient, because they didn't have any food, coat, transportation, or clothing. And when we wrote the tenant relocation ordinance, I think it was for situations where the landlord was letting the property get down to a certain level that we assumed people could pack a duffel bag and had time to move and weren't necessarily in an emergency situation. So to be in a situation where you literally are evacuated from a fire and have nothing. And I know I've received calls from the lieutenant at the fire department here as well in a similar situation. And we were able to kind of troubleshoot on the phone. I think it was Christmas Eve or the 2 days before Christmas, and kind of talk through how to handle a really tricky situation. And I just think going from a more informal relationship to a formal relationship where if the city is going to bring folks over to the hotel, that basically like a street outreach worker, you know, we bring food and essentials, or the city has those on hand and we're able to bring them to make sure that they have, because they were in, especially because they couldn't walk outside of the hotel because it was sub-degree weather. It was like a terrible perfect storm of all these, you know, the fire, losing all your things. And so my concern is just stranding people without their basic necessities. Now, I know that the letter they received said that the Red Cross was coming the next day between 2 hours. And I've been talking to the residents, and I can't confirm that the Red Cross ever showed up. I don't think they ever showed up.
I don't know. I mean, historically, that is who provided the emergency response,
Yeah.
you know, in the immediate aftermath, and then township would
Yeah,
follow
would come
up.
after, exactly.
So that's another thing we need to confirm what the status of the Red Cross is.
So I think it was great that they had housing, because in Champaign, they wouldn't have had housing at all. And really regrettable that they didn't have basic needs. And I think when we met with them, I mean, I had a case manager in tears in my office afterwards because it was a really devastating situation. And so just thinking about when people have a devastating situation, and fire is the one that comes up frequently where I feel like there's real gaps. If somebody already is in a situation where they have few resources or community connections, and then there's a fire or utilities turned off or something like that, I think I would really like to spend some planning time with the city to think through how can we interleave our programs more closely so that we can really meet everybody's needs right away and not have them wait for basics.
Sharice?
Thinking about all that, everything that you were just saying, the thing that comes to mind first with me is when these kinds of emergencies happen, does the city have anybody on staff that does that other than the fire department?
We do not.
Okay.
Is the social worker position filled that was authorized in the budget? That was one question that came up during this, or have it not been filled
Yeah,
yet?
he's here.
There is a contracted social worker?
Yeah.
Okay. So
But-
maybe that would
That would be the logical, yeah.
But I'm just thinking as far as 24/7 on call, something I don't think we have anybody on staff that's like that.
Not 24/7, no.
Okay, the other thing that came to mind, that's good to know. The other thing that came to mind with me is like when you said, basic needs, because I understand those basic needs need to be met. Maybe there could be something put in place where we have, whether it's township or it's city, but like $100 voucher or something for them to go to Salt and Light, Goodwill, something like that, so that their basic needs can be met. I know Salt and Light also sells food. That could be two birds with one stone. And when you have nothing, something is often better than none. So being able to meet those needs with a voucher, Salt and Light sends that back to us. It's been used. We pay them with it's like an invoice.
And again, typically, that's what Red Cross services used to do.
Yeah,
I don't
so
know what happened that night.
that is definitely something that's going to have to be figured out more than just having a conversation in an open meeting right now.
Correct.
So I don't know how, that's just flying off the top of my head and thinking of how some of these issues could be done, and it would obviously, to me, have to go through the fire department before we talk about a social worker, because of the simple fact that they're the people that are on site.
Yeah, exactly. And could fire and police, they are 24/7 workers.
Right.
And so can they be equipped with some basic needs packages so that people can get bus tokens, basic food, clothing, coats, some of those material needs when there's an emergency? It just seems like it might be more efficient to include those in those 24/7 staff roles. And then, it might be a day or two, we don't have overnight service at the township, but to speed up then that process where we're able to evaluate folks within just a matter of days, rather than weeks. But I think it's a combination of both, and I welcome a conversation around that piece.
Yeah, okay.
Chris?
Daniel, do you have a guesstimate on how many people in Urbana are receiving Social Security benefits?
The American Community Survey can give you that information. I don't have the latest. The last time I looked, it was for Champaign County as a whole. And the number, I think you remember the SSI numbers, and showed how SSI users have gone up. So the SSI participants in the county increased by about 21% between 2008 and 2018. So we definitely have seen an increase in folks And according to, this is again a little bit out of date, and the recent census was kind of flawed, so I'm looking at pre-pandemic numbers. It was about 3,200 people in Champaign County live off SSI. And that, I don't think that includes SSDI, that's just SSI looking at folks at the kind of lowest rung of payments, disability payments.
Any other questions? Grace?
Nope, excuse me, thank you. I think that this is okay time, but let me know if not, during this reports of officers to talk about Champaign Township, and if you had any things you could share about how that went for Cunningham Township, and pulling the item and other ways people could be involved if they would like.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would encourage, I know the town board has been very supportive. I think you have seen, both town boards actually in our sister city and here have been very supportive of the townships and the tax levy. It was a unanimous vote in Champaign to put the proposition on for April 1st to increase the limiting rate for the city of Champaign Township. Even with the increase, so Champaign and Cunningham Township's property tax rate, they're 1/10 of our rate right now, like just a tiny fraction of, and they're one of the lowest in the state, and certainly the lowest for any community our size that looks like us. And so they've been stuck under tax caps, and their entire tax levy brings in about $900,000 a year. So if you compare that to our tax levy that's bringing in 2.3, 2.2, 2.3 million, and we're half their size, it gives you a sense of what they're up against. So each year, the city of Champaign has to, they run out of funds for rental assistance. They haven't increased their general assistance in years. We have a higher general assistance payment. We're following the state recommendation. They're not. And that means that people aren't having their basic needs met. And then Strides is funded, it's our only 24/7, 365 days a year low barrier shelter for the county as a whole. And so a loss of that, we already saw that Strides was full. To lose that would just be sliding backwards by 10 years. And so one of the ways that if there are folks who are interested in knowing more about that, there is a website, yeschampaign.org. There is the resolution information on the City of Champaign Township website. I did pull the resolution because the word support can be misconstrued. So certainly we're not doing financial support for the proposition in any way. But it was recommended that that each of you as an independently elected official can make your choice about whether or not to support and endorse. The other thing is, for folks can talk to your voter friends in Champaign and let them know about the resolution. In terms of what it's done in Urbana, it's very simple. 63% of residents in Urbana during a pandemic voted to increase our taxes. They pay about, somewhere between $10 and $100 or more per year. In most cases, it runs around $30 to $40 in total for the year in addition. And what we did is we've essentially come very close to eliminating family homelessness in Urbana. So it is very, very rare that we have folks on our waiting list who we are not moving into housing. It's almost always that anybody who is literally homeless, who's staying at Crisis Nursery or has kids in Urbana schools, is now housed. And that has largely been, and that is sustainable past ARPA dollars, past grant funding from the state, et cetera. So it's had a huge impact. And I think, we've been able to absorb family homelessness. We only had 8 units before for the whole county. Now we have 16 with flex hotel rooms. We've been able to provide a lot more rental assistance and prevent homelessness, which is really important. Been able to increase general assistance payments. And we've supplemented that with grants and private funds. And City of Champaign does have the similar grants. And they will continue to be seeking that grant funding, and they'll need funding for the full diversity of services. But for the basic minimum, the tax levy will be really important for them. So I don't know if that fully answers your question, but what I can say is that we work every single day with folks who are residents at Strides or moving out of Strides, and the impact of having a safe place where you can lay your head, it cannot be underestimated. It's really a basic human right and human dignity for people to have a place to go that is safe for them. So one of the many things that we can do in an era where HUD workers are being laid off, and we're looking at some significant budget cuts in housing at the federal level.
All right, we'll move on to unfinished business.
Nope, none.
None. New business is off the agenda, and we'll move on to adjournment. This meeting is adjourned. And this will be followed immediately by the regular meeting of the Urbana City Council. We're deferring, we're pulling these off. Continue.
It's not my fault this time.
It was very helpful.
Okay, we'll try again. Good evening. We'll welcome to the meeting of the City Council. It's a regular meeting of the Urbana City Council for Monday, March 10th, 2025. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Wu, Councilmember Evans,
Here.
Councilmember Hersey,
Here.
Councilmember Colasetti, Councilmember Bishop, Councilmember Wilkin,
Here.
Councilmember Quisenberry,
Here.
Mayor Marlin.
Here. Next item is approval of minutes from the February 3rd, 2025 Committee of the Whole. Is there a motion for approval?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved by Sharice, seconded by Grace. Are there any substantial corrections to the minutes? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion passes. Any additions or changes to the agenda, we are going to need to pull both items on the regular agenda off the agenda, and it'll be sent to a rescheduled council meeting. That would be the budget amendment number 6, which is ordinance 2025-03-007. And the second one is the ordinance 2025-03-008, which is the approval of the issuance of the bonds. We'll move on to presentation. Oh, is there a motion to approve that?
Move to approve.
Okay, second?
Second.
Seconded by James. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay. We'll move on to public input. Does anyone wish to address the Urbana City Council? Okay. Council input and communications. Reports of standing committees, there are none. We'll move on to the Committee of the Whole consent agenda. Councilmember Evans.
Thank you. I move the consent agenda for approval with the following items. Resolution number 2025-03-018R, a resolution authorizing the execution of an intergovernmental agreement for residential electronics and household hazardous waste collection. Resolution number 2025-03-019R, a resolution certifying a community housing development organization for the Urbana Home Consortium, namely Habitat for Humanity Program Year 2025. And finally, a resolution number 2025-03-020R, a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of an Urbana Home Consortium Community Housing Development Organization funding agreement, namely with Habitat for Humanity for the program year 2025. All those for approval.
Second.
And I'm sorry, point of order, I didn't catch you before you read them all. I need to divide to pull out A to abstain. And then follow-up question, can that go with the majority and still be okay with 4 of us present? Sorry, I forgot about that.
Yeah, that should be fine because it's the majority of the members present for passage.
Okay, I'm sorry, so I would request that we pull item A from that.
All right. So do you want to revise your motion?
Yeah. I will revise my motion to just the 2 items, resolution number 2025-03-19R and resolution number 2025-03-020R for the consent agenda. And then, well, I guess this will be now.
Hold off on that. So,
All right.
Sharice, you okay with that? All right. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Evans,
Yes.
Councilmember Hersey,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilkin,
Yes.
Councilmember Quisenberry.
Yes.
That motion passes.
I will now motion for resolution number 2025-03-018R for approval.
Second.
I'm going to give that one to James.
Okay.
Share the wealth. That was moved by Councilmember Evans, seconded by Councilmember Quisenberry. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Evans,
Yes.
Councilmember Hersey,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilkin,
Abstain.
Councilmember Quisenberry.
Yes.
That motion passes. Thank you. As we said, we have pulled both items on the regular agenda for a rescheduled meeting. Reports of special committees, there are none. Reports of officers. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to announce to folks that on this Thursday, March 13th, will be a public hearing of the Plan Commission for Imagine Urbana. So everybody should have gotten a postcard to that effect, and hopefully people will turn out and share their thoughts with the Plan Commission.
Thank you. And with no further business before this body, this meeting is adjourned. This could be a record.